David Cameron has reportedly secured an £800,000 advance for his autobiography. Not bad, but not quite the £4.6 million advance that Tony Blair got for his. The market for memoirs is huge, although John Prescott's... Can any of you remember the name of that?
Present.
No. There you go, well done. Well, you obviously bought one, but it's sold under 9,000 copies. But as well as the cash, I think this is also about politicians wanting to secure their legacy and make sure they write the first draft of history. Cameron's spin doctor, Craig Oliver, published Unleashing Demons, the inside story of Brexit, on the 4th of October, just 102 days after the vote. Barely time for Nigel Farage to recover from his hangover. How can we trust people if we know they're writing notes in apparently confidential meetings? And how can the public trust politicians who have been so publicly slagged off? James Callaghan waited 8 years to publish his poetically titled memoir, Time and Chance. And at least Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher waited 3 years. We've got to stop this rush to print. It's not all about you guys.
I've got a confession to make.
You've got a memoir coming out.
No, but I did write a book about the time I edited The Lady and published it while I was still editing The Lady magazine. And actually, it is available still in all good bookshops now, called A Diary of the Lady. And I remember,
shops.
and I did get some stick at the time for people saying, actually more from staff saying, I'm really worried about how you're going to present me because we're still working together. So, in fact, I let my publisher read it and it was all fine and I carried on editing Lady for a certain period of time. I think the issue with more public servants are twofold. One, are you using your time in office to feather your own nest afterwards? And is that your actual intention? And Craig Oliver was kicked out of meetings in Downing Street towards the end because people saw him writing contemporaneous notes. And they realised that, you know, he was just taking notes because he was going to publish a book straight out without leaving any intervening period of kind of cool-down period. So I think there's that. And I think the other issue is really the Official Secrets Act. I mean, if you are in MI6 and you've signed it, then you cannot. And that's why we had the Spycatcher case, which you had to buy the book in Australia. And that's why you have these wonderful old biddies who worked in Bletchley in their 90s who still haven't told their husbands that they worked in Bletchley Park, and good for them. They've signed the Official Secrets Act. They're abiding by it until their dying day. So that's my point. Don't use your time in office to make money off the back of it, apart from me, which I tried to and failed. And two, if you've signed the Official Secrets Act, you've got to stick by the rules.
Well, talking about people who cash in at the first opportunity. Oh my God, Graeme Le Saux. Are you rather not? I offer that as the case for the defence.
That sold slightly less than Prez's book, 14 to date.
Did your mum buy all 14?
Yeah, exactly.
But on a serious note,
signed.
to play some of your words back to you, we should stop it. How? Let's refer to politicians.
Absolutely.
And I hear what you say, and that's appalling. And we have moved to this age where, you're right, within 100 days books are coming out. But how would you actually... You would mandate politicians? What would be the time when they could write their books?
But I think there has to be a test in the sense that there has to be a time frame, something that is discussed and agreed, and when somebody has left office and when that information becomes less sensitive as well. And so it can't be just a set of rules that everyone applies to, because different people will have different issues around the sensitivity of information that they know. Because when you're talking, I mean, we can all laugh about my book. I mean, you know, it was a...
Most people did. Critics
some good jokes. But again, I'm not dealing with highly sensitive information, but what happens, and to your point, the potential for damage when you're in a current position is huge. Glenn Hoddle, who was my manager for England, he told us specifically before the 1998 World Cup that none of us were to write books during the tournament. And 3 months after the tournament, he had a book that came out. And that...
Is that the anecdote you were going to tell us?
That caused a huge rift within the dressing room, because people said, he's cashing in on our story. And not only that, but he's denied other people, the players, cashing in as well. Yeah. And that had created a massive conflict within the dressing room.
Your sense is, if let's say I'm the Foreign Secretary, I might not be wanting to say anything in front of the Prime Minister or the Press Secretary, because I'm thinking, I actually don't want to tell her what I think of her, because if somebody's going to write it down, I'm
exactly
going to look like an
that.
idiot.
When is that? It's
you
twofold.
think that's happening?
Well, I think it obviously did happen throughout Brexit and Downing Street.
What I don't understand in this, because I too have written an autobiography, and I'm gutted you don't have a copy of it. I need to boost my sales.
Left at home.
There you go.
What's
Lighting
it
the fire
called?
tonight.
What's it called?
It's called Anything Is Possible, and I wrote it 10 years ago. And when I wrote that, I wrote it for one reason and one reason only, because I was getting so much hassle and grief within the tabloids, and I decided to set the story straight once and for all, so I didn't give further interviews and all the rest of it. So that was my reasons for writing it. But I know that when I wrote mine, the lawyers, you know, and I was like, I wasn't a politician or anything like that, but even on mine, the lawyers was all over me like a skin rash, making sure that I didn't do anything bad or say anything bad. So I would be quite surprised just how damaging, you know, or how some of these damaging things get through into a book, because that's, to me, the role of the lawyer to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, go on, you carry on.
Well, the only thing I'd say is, I totally get your point. I think, but the problem we have is people have such short attention spans now because of the sort of social media and age of reality TV, that for a lot of these people, if they don't come out with books straight away, the public will have lost interest.
Yeah, but that's...
You know, I mean, David Cameron might be different, but for a Craig Oliver, it had to be now or never,
David
really.
who?
David Cameron.
By the way, he... Go on. Little scoop for the programme. Yeah. He's got more than 1 million. The figure's wrong.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so he's not doing that bad. I don't know.
Well, is it
That's
2?
all I know.
That's shocking.
No,
Is
I
the
think
first
it's
figure
between
1?
The first figure is obviously 1. Right?
Hang on, why is that shocking?
I'm
Just so I know.
sorry. You know, well, we won't get into Brexit now.
Would
but,
you
you
prefer
know,
that he went and worked for Goldman Sachs, June, rather than spend, you know, a couple of years writing a book in which he might set the
I would have
record straight?
preferred that he didn't call a referendum.
Getting back on track.
Sorry.
What about the issue of legacy, though? What about people wanting to rewrite or write their
History.
own
That's why
sort of
they're doing
history?
it.
Everyone can have their own version. I think everyone should be free to write if they are not in some way prevented by official, you know, dynamics.
What's that?
Do you think there's a potential, though, that it does damage the integrity of a meeting and the fact that people can be honest because they worry that others around the table are using what they're saying potentially for benefit in the future?
What did you say? The benefit of what? Not that you've anything to worry about. What time was that? Right.
Are you keeping a diary, Nick?
I am not. No,
Are you going to
should
write a
be.
memoir? You should.
I'm not going to name them. I've written a couple of books. Yeah, I suppose when I get
But not
get
about
fired
yourself,
and I
though.
find my fat ass sitting on the pavement with nothing to do. Yeah, I'll start telling stories about June Sarpong and Rachel Johnson and Michelle Joubert.
I mean,
no choice.
what Winston Churchill could have said is keep a diary and the diary will keep you. But those were the days when books sold.
When I did The Apprentice, a former contestant that I was working alongside wrote a book. It was an expose of what goes on behind the scenes of The Apprentice. So they wrote this book, and it blocked from being published because it contradicted the contract that we had signed at the point of going into that show. The lawyers, the lawyers for the BBC. So surely, if you don't want these people, when getting these public appointments to be able to do this, then factor something into their contract that was restricted.
How do you do that with the Prime Minister, though?
Well, it's very difficult, but I know there's a book here. Could you pass it to me? Thank you. Is it Nick with a...
2 Ks. 2 Ks, is it? Okay,
fine.
Hey, it's going to be worth a lot of money now.
Exactly, 2 Nick. I can't swear on air. Exactly, 2 Nick. I'll finish that later for you.
You want me to do what? What with the book?
So...